Hello, greetings from the office of United Religions Initiatives, South India and Sri Lanka region, Kottarakara. COVID-19 pandemic has brought about a massive wave among the world population. Through quarantine, lockdown, social distancing, etc., the whole world is directly and indirectly affected by this biological disaster. At this juncture, and in the event of increasing trend in number and intensity of disasters due to climate variations or any other reason, it will be in order to know more about disasters in general and how to manage effectively and minimize the impact it creates. This sharing of knowledge has a background of over 4 decades working experience in disaster management in India and outside India under the organizational backup of the Lutheran World Federation, Geneva, Switzerland. This includes all major disasters in India state since 1976 and outside India, Cyclone Nargis in Myanmar 2008, multiple disasters, earthquake, tsunami and nuclear plant leakage in Japan 2011, devastating earthquake in Haiti 2012, typhoon or Yolanda in Philippines 2014, Nepal earthquake in 2015, etc. In addition to the exposure to related activities in over 20 countries spread out in 4 continental till date, it has become a passion for me to be involved in mitigating the impact of disasters in any capacity. Through a series, disaster management approach has different phases such as rapid response, rehabilitation or early recovery, reconstruction, mitigation, development preparedness, etc. Each phase requires planning, implementation, monitoring and evaluation in PIME, P-I-M-E. In all these phases, participation and coordination are to be ensured at different levels. Through a series of talks, I would like to reach out especially to the students community and offer a systematic dissemination of knowledge to create general awareness among the people at large. Your feedback and comments to this session will be a source of inspiration and noble reward to continue this my humble effort. This may be of help to the disaster management service providers and service bearers and the stakeholders to have more seamless and effective outcome impact while handling any type of calamities or disasters. What is a disaster? Any hazard, natural or human, induced which disrupts the prevailing situation of a large area to such an extent that external help is required to bring the area to normalcy is called disaster. What are the types of disasters? Disaster may be human made when it occurs by right, chemical hazards, etc., and natural like earthquake, flood, cyclone, drought, etc. Disaster can be classified into 4 basic groups: meteorological, hydrological, geological and human activity related, and or it could be also called biological. Meteorological such as cyclone, storm surge, wind damage, tornado, etc. Hydrological are flood, drought and urban flood. These are all related to water. Geological, earthquake, tsunami, volcano and landslide. And other area is human activity related disasters, which are such as greenhouse warming, chemical leaking, oil spillage, nuclear activity, war, riot, pandemic virus, etc. What are the causes of disaster? To be precise, main cause of disasters are hazards, and presence of vulnerability and absence of capacity. Natural hazards are part of regular natural process. Nobody can stop those. Through constant endeavor, vulnerability can be reduced. If vulnerability is not there, earthquake, cyclone, flood, etc. will be like any other natural event. The hazards themselves are not disasters, but rather a factor in causing a disaster. Two other factors are essential: the event's efforts or people and their environment, the human activities that increase its impact. How disaster affect people? Hazard by itself do not cause any loss or death. The weak and vulnerable structures, things, and other items cause loss and damage. Disasters cause a great loss to the human civilization. Loss of life, property, and ecology are the main. While talking about the loss of disasters, we always talk only about life and property loss. But we should keep in mind that damage of ecology, natural beauty also have a great influence on human civilization. Disaster hamper development process and people lose inspiration. Disaster makes people traumatized. Number of people get eccentric, lose mental balance. What are hazards and vulnerability? Hazard is a sudden or slow onset event which may cause damage or loss. Vulnerability is state or being vulnerable. Now, vulnerable means possibility of being harmed. It exposes weakness. By degree of vulnerability, we mean how easily the thing or object or life can be damaged. It depends also on the event which is going to cause the damage. As objects may withstand a specific hazard, but it is vulnerable to a hazard of more power or intense. The roots of poverty are also roots of vulnerability. Let us see what is hazard. A threatening event or the probability of occurrence of a phenomenon that has the potential or causing partial or complete loss of life, property, geographical situation, and ecosystems within the period of time. What is vulnerability? A set of elements within the given community composed of physical, social, economic, political, and environmental factors which are susceptible to be partially or fully damaged, destroyed due to lack of an ability to respond a hazardous event when it occurs. Geographic: unsafe area, danger prone, and reforestation. These can be termed as the geographic. Then what are physical? Thatched houses, unsafe houses which are constructed not considering building codes, which I hope you understand how the risk factors are in these type of structures. Then social vulnerability: caste feeling, communalism, illiteracy, lack of knowledge, traditional culture practice, and population growth and migrations. Risk materials are such as power lines, poor embankment, culvert, poor communication, road, weaker section of people. And economic vulnerability are mainly poverty, and hazard consists of one or more risk. For a same hazard, the risk will be different when viewed from different angle. Example: a village connected to other village by a weak bridge. When seen by a social scientist, the community is vulnerable and the weak bridge is in risk, because if it breaks, communication system will fail. But when seen by a civil engineer, gushing water in the risk is the risk for a vulnerable bridge. For both the cases, hazard is the flood. Vulnerability is weakness with respect to a specific risk. Vulnerability is always risk dependent. What is vulnerable to a specific risk may not be vulnerable to another risk. Example, a large tree beside a house. The tree is risk for a house if strong wind is there. Any item or thing which perish get damaged against certain force. Item is vulnerable to the specific risk. Then what is flood? I am just trying to explain some of the common disasters which we face. Flood is a situation created naturally or artificially, where the river and its tributaries cannot carry the total water coming through it, and a large area in its catchments is submerged into water. For Indians especially, flood is not a strange thing, it is a common for all. We are all experienced that. What is a cyclone? Cyclone is severe atmospheric disturbance in the tropical ocean between latitudes of approximate 5 and 30 degrees in both the hemispheres. Such storms are characterized by very low atmospheric pressure in the calm, clear center or a circular structure or rain, cloud and very high wind. The winds spiral inward toward the storm center clockwise in south hemisphere and anti-clockwise in the north hemisphere. I have personally seen cyclone in Orissa during super cyclone. It continued the wind, whirlwind like 36 hours with heavy rains. So, in the light of the recently developed situation, that is COVID-19 pandemic, let us talk a little bit about human activity related biological disasters. Biological disasters define the devastating effects caused by an enormous spread of a certain kind of living organism. That may spread a disease, virus or an epidemic. Biological disasters can also be simply a sudden growth in the population of a certain kind of plants or animal, etc., a locust plague. I am talking about the general biological disasters, but we all know the biological disaster that COVID brought into the world that everybody is aware of, and there are a lot of instructions and knowledge, etc. Biological disasters are outbreaks of diseases or contagious of plant and animal life on an epidemic or pandemic level, or infestations of animal or insects in an epidemic or pandemic level. Example of biological disasters include cholera, the influenza, H1N1, swine flu, COVID-19, etc., which is very recent one. And thereby, we all know there is, I don't think anybody in this world who are not aware of this current situation, which is a biological disaster. Epidemic level biological disasters affect large number of people within a given community or area, whereas pandemic level biological disasters affect a much larger region, sometimes spanning entire continents or the globe, which is again COVID-19 is a best example of this. And cholera is an epidemic level biological disaster, while swine flu is a pandemic. Other epidemic examples include Ebola, dengue fever, malaria and the measles. COVID-19 again that the coronavirus is a best example for our living time, and still it is prevailing, and nobody knows how long it will continue. The whole world is threatened by that, and we all are directly affected. As I mentioned earlier, indirectly also some people are affected, and the country is at blind where to go, and these are the situation. The United Nations Center for Disease Control, it's called CDC, categorized biological hazard that could potentially cause a biological disaster into 4 levels. These are classified as biosafety level 1 to 4 or BSL 1 to 4. BSL 1 contains viruses like chickenpox and require only the use of facial covering and gloves to protect against contagion. BSL 2 contains diseases and viruses that are not generally airborne, such as hepatitis and HIV. So, BSL 2 takes more extreme precautions within a lab setting for safety purposes, including the use of autoclaves or sterilizing and biological safety cabinets. BSNL 3 includes diseases that cause potentially fatal reactions in humans and require much more stringent safety protocols within the lab. This can include the use of respirators to prevent airborne infection. Biological hazards in this group generally have known vaccines or treatments. BSL 4 contains biological hazard, COVID-19, that are potentially fatal to humans, for which there is no known treatment or vaccine. So that is the main reason we are now in a very difficult situation. Laboratory safety includes the use of full body safety suits through strictly maintaining social distance, using protective masks, following personal hygiene, healthy lifestyle, etc. Spreading of coronavirus can be controlled to great extent. The government is really working very hard all over the world to address this biological disaster, and of course the people are to cooperate with the authorities in maintaining its instruction and following strictly the instruction. And there are specific crisis models and software: earthquake, flood, cyclone, drought, landslide, forest fire, oil spill, nuclear accidents, epidemic, industrial or chemical. All these are available in the sites, but basically I am trying to make an attempt to provide the basic disaster related knowledge, so that the general public can have an idea. This is the beginning, in the first session, the first talk, and based on your feedback and comments, I am sure with my working experience we can proceed further with the other phases of the disaster response or disaster management. There are many phases which are very carefully to be handled. It is not like anyway anybody can do that, but it needs proper practice, training, and proper guidelines, etc. are required. And I hope this has become of some use for you, and I welcome your comments to proceed further with further sessions, and especially the students community will be benefited for their knowledge based for future facing any type of disasters. Disasters are increasing in numbers and also intensity. So it is essential for everyone to be aware of what is disaster and how we can face it, how we can manage it, how we can collaborate with others, how we can coordinate with others. All these factors are very important. Let us work together to have a safe world around us, and let us take care of one another. Volunteerism is a very important factor. This has been my experience when I engaged in many countries and many disaster situations. Thank you, and may God bless you.